What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic, and I am back with a collection update. Kind of long overdue. It isn't though I haven't been purchasing music, I just haven't got around to it. But I got around to a pretty good sized stack here with, I don't know, kind of like a mixed bag sort of variety. We have some reissues here. We have some new releases that I didn't get a chance to go over. We have some relatively rare stuff that I just kind of happened upon too. We got some stuff from the Metalhead box once again, and we even got some stuff that is a little bit off the metal spectrum. So this one is kind of an interesting mixed bag. So let's just get this thing kicked off, and we're gonna kick it off with a reissue that came out that I'm not entirely sure why I bought, because I bought the 10th anniversary of this. This is the 20th anniversary of Slipknot's debut album. I love this album. Full transparency, I think this is one of the best new metal albums that was ever fucking created. I love it to death. I still jam the shit out of it. And honestly, I probably would lean more towards the 10th anniversary just because I feel like there's more to it. Like, yeah, this does have a bonus disc full of, demos, alternate mixes. A lot of the stuff is also on the 10th anniversary. There are some demos that aren't on that one, but most of what you're going to get on here is on the 10th anniversary. I think the packaging is a little bit better. Now, this first album, I've always had an issue with how they have tracked it since that debut, because, there was a point where they took Purity off because, oh, it's too dark or fucking whatever. I don't know. It's like, dude, it's metal. It's a dark story. If we took off songs because they had dark subject matter, we probably wouldn't have a lot of metal. But this one I do feel is tracked weird. Like, they put Purity on the second disc, as well as Eeyore, which is a separate track on the second disc. I mean, I suppose that's better than being, the hidden track, but they did do it as a separate track on the last one too. I don't know. The song Get This, if you're a fan of it, guess what? Completely omitted on here. It's not on here at all. I'm just kind of shocked by that. And as far as like a remix or remaster, honestly, I don't think it ever really needed that. I like Ross Robinson's production on the first one. It's never needed to change. So yeah, I wouldn't say this is the most necessary edition. Like, if you're looking for a fresh copy or like a special anniversary edition of this, I would honestly go with the 10th anniversary overall. This one's okay, but I feel like the 10th anniversary just has more to it. But still, check it out, and this one's probably more readily available than, the 10th anniversary. I don't know, maybe more readily available than an original copy of the first album. I don't know. I still got all that shit down in the basement because I've been a fan for so long. But yeah, check it out. It's pretty good. Regurgitation, Tales of Necrophilia. This is the lone full length from this Ohio brutal death metal act. Pretty much Legends of the Underground, not only for the music, but probably for this fucking album cover. This originally came out in 1999. This is a reissue on Ablated Records. I'm not really sure what year, but I've been meaning to get this for a while. It's kind of an underground staple. I've jammed individual tracks. I know people fucking talk this one up for years. And yeah, no, this is pretty fucking awesome, grimy, old school death metal. Musically, it kind of runs almost like a more technical Cannibal Corpse. It's got the low, it's got low gutturals, but they're more of like an old school kind of like death metal vibe to them. They kind of sound a bit Barnes-ish, but the riff work, I don't know, honestly, it screams like later Cannibal Corpse, but I don't know, it's kind of like a dying fetus fucking filter in it. Like, it just has more brutality to it. It's faster. It's got like kind of that suffocation-esque heft to it. I mean, back to the artwork, it's almost got like a more brutal Cannibal Corpse there too. Like, I don't know what the idea was, other than they looked at some Cannibal Corpse album covers, like namely Eat Back to Life. It's like, you know what that's missing? Something sexy. And I'm pretty sure when they pitched it, like, yeah, we want a Cannibal Corpse album, but like sexier. Like, oh, so like Tomb of the Mutilated, but sexier? It's like, yeah. We want penetration. And I guess we kind of got it. Kind of looks like they're sharing like a kielbasa down there. I don't know if this dude took like an anatomy class, but I don't know. Everyone seems like they're having a good time there. I mean, the skull's smiling, whatever. But the music, again, absolutely awesome. It's tight. It's got really clever, like angular riffs all over the place. Some really cool techie spots on songs like Acid Enema. Yeah, the song titles are great too. I really appreciate Menstrual Cycle, and that's Cycle C-Y-K-I-L. Isn't that how the GoBots villain spelled it? Love the grooves and the sick drum work on Repulsive Genital Disfigurement and Seed of the Sanguinary. Just like solid old school grooves. Again, there's a lot of like that kind of like proto brutal death metal stuff. Like, I wouldn't consider Suffocation brutal death metal, but it influenced the sound. Same thing with like Broken Hope or Baphomet. It's got a lot of that charm to it. I will say that the snare, I mean, again, I'm like kind of partial about brutal death snares. It is a little bit obnoxious. And I will say I wasn't expecting anything remotely acoustic, but I got a little bit of that on fetal suffocation. I don't know if you're like suffocating someone with a fetus or suffocating a fetus there. You know, I feel like it's dealer's choice with this band. But while it was good, I just didn't expect that. Then this version has like a bunch of live tracks, which it's cool they got together a bunch of live tracks, which I assume were older ones, but the quality on them is pretty damn rough. They're pretty fucking muffled. Either way though, this is pretty awesome, and I don't want to go too much more into it because we might just do a full-on retro review for it because it is a one and done, and at least in these parts, this album does have a pretty like underground legendary status. But yeah, if you're a fan of Suffocation, Dying Fetus, Cannibal Corpse, Broken Hope, all that shit, check this out. Pretty fucking gnarly. Disfuneral, In Horror, Reborn. This is the second album from this French death metal act. Maybe HM2 death metal, at least maybe they were more in the first one. I don't know. It's fiercely old school though. Like this is very 90s oriented death metal. They love riffs. They love swampier tones. They even like a little bit of punk and doom. Like this is kind of an interesting blend of bands like Autopsy for sure, but also Entombed. And honestly a bit of like Entombed AD and like Death Breath too. Like there's just some like really good murky, punky stuff on here. And then like a tone that kind of occasionally borders on that HM2 kind of like buzzsaw sizzle, but it just feels, I don't know, like muddier, like it was submerged in filth and then played. Now again, this is like a little bit different than their debut Blood Red Tentacle, which I feel like there's like a hentai connection there that could probably be made even though they're French. But that one definitely had more of a just a straight up, you know, entombed, dismember, worship sort of sound. This one kind of expands it a little bit more, and you kind of get this Autopsy thing where you get the swing between like that punkier, more DB driven death metal to flat out like death doom moments on here. Songs like Ripped From Within or Dark Ages Ritual, they have again like a good mix of like these just punky, just gross, grimy D beats and just filthy vocals, murky atmosphere. And then they just slow down in like these pockets of filth and sludge and doom with solid grooves, riffs for fucking days across here. It just kind of has that, you know, it just kind of has that Autopsy vibe. Or again, Death Breath. Like there's this, I don't know, like over the top sort of like campiness to it that I absolutely love. The vocals are a huge part of that too. They're very dramatic. They're very over the top. The band itself just seems to kind of like revel in like just old school horror tropes. Like it likes being down in the guts and the viscera and telling tales of fucking goblins and all that shit, and I'm 100% there for it. There's nothing like super technical on here. There's really like only a couple of spots with blast beats. Honestly, this band, I feel like just kind of targeted the late 80s and early 90s and said, here, this is where we live. This is just a nice, rotten place for us to hang out and just do our best to spawn as many filthy riffs as possible, and mission accomplished. I would say they nailed every aspect about this. The music fits the vibe, the production here. It's a little bit cleaner overall, but it captures that vibe. It sounds swampy, it sounds murky. It just sounds, you know, better separated. They kind of took the time to separate the filth. But yeah, if you're a big fan of, again, like Entombed, Entombed AD, Death Breath, I would even throw in Unleashed too, and of course a ton of Autopsy. Check this out, damn good album. Cephalic Carnage, Conforming to Abnormality. This is the debut album from Denver Death Grind / Hydro Grind legends. I already own this, but I didn't own this version. This is the 2002 reissue on Hybrid Records. I saw it in the used bin for a pretty reasonable price. I was like, yeah, you know what, why not get yet another version of this? I have the 2008 reissue, like comp with all their stuff. Plus, I also have the split they did with Anal Blast, and both those versions have literally every song that's on here, so this is legit like nothing new in my collection. I just wanted another version of it. And musically, I mean, this isn't my favorite stuff from Cephalic Carnage. It's still good. I like everything this band has put out, and I'd really, really like it if they put out something new, because it's been like, I think over a decade now. Actually, it's been 15 years since Misled by Certainty. Holy shit, that was a while ago. Either way, solid debut. I mean, it's just filthy, grindy, but, you know, surprisingly very technical. Like, I loved how, you know, like oddly technical this band was, and really like all over the place in terms of like lyrics and themes. Like this band is and rarefied air in terms of like grindcore / death grind bands. And I'm stoked to see him once again at MDF next year. That should be a lot of fun. But yeah, kind of a random pickup here. Either way, if you have not jammed this, it's an amazing album. But I'll say like they legit got like a lot better throughout their career because that's what they did. I don't know, it's something in the weed out there. They would get a lot better, like I mean when you get down to like Anomalies and shit like that and Lucid Interval, fuck dude. I mean you're just talking like some of the best death grind ever. But yeah, definitely still worth checking out though. Dying Fetus, Infatuation with Malevolence demo. Now this originally came out in 1994 from this Baltimore-based brutal death metal act. Everyone fucking knows them. Like they're practically one of the most well-known brutal death metal acts out there. But this is a comp of their first 2 demos, and I believe this album right here, which came out on Wild Rags Records in 1995, is the first time that they appeared on CD. So this is, I believe, the first time that Infatuation with Malevolence and Bathed in Entrails were on CD. And this goes for a fair amount of money. I'm not gonna tell you how much I paid for it, but I got a pretty nice discount. And this is yet another one that I already own. Granted, not this version. I have the 2011 reissue and remaster from Relapse, which they did a fantastic job on that. But I'm collector scum, and I saw this much older, much more rare version. I was like, fuck it, why not? But yeah, I already know all these songs. I've jammed them before. Grotesque Impalement, still probably one of my favorite old school Dying Fetus songs. Man, Netherton and fucking Gallagher were a hell of a fucking tandem, especially in terms of vocals. Like, I love Sean's vocals too, but there's some of that early stuff, you know, I mean, I got into him with that earlier stuff that's just fucking magic. Definitely not a drum machine on here, though it 100% sounds like a drum machine. And it's definitely cool hearing that 2 guitarist era again. I think they're an absolutely devastating 3-piece, but I do like that 2 guitarist era way back in the day. That's where I got into them again, too. But yeah, this is pretty damn awesome. In terms of which one I would jam between the 2011 remaster and this one, it honestly is kind of a toss-up. Both of them still sound gritty, though, I mean, admittedly, the remaster sounds a little bit more cleaned up. But the remaster has additional punch that this one just doesn't have, especially in the drums. But either way, they both sound fucking great. They're just brutal and chuggy and fucking awesome. And yeah, this was a hell of a fucking find. And yeah, pretty much if you're a fan of just, I mean, brutal death metal in general, like if you like brutal death metal, there's a good chance you like Dying Fetus. Like in terms of brutal death metal, you know, in terms of like all the tropes of the sound and everything, I think Dying Fetus has probably had their hands in just about all of them. Either way, if you've never checked out the demo, strongly recommend it, whether you check out the remaster or find a version of this. Like, I'm going to post the link to the OG one if I can find it in YouTube. But yeah, just check it out. It's damn good shit. Nailed to Obscurity, Generation of the Void. This is the 5th album from this German melodic death doom act / progressive metal act. I don't know. This is the first time I have ever sat down and jammed one of their albums. I've listened to individual tracks in passing. And I said I liked enough of what I heard from past albums to check out the new one. And this is absolutely incredible. I feel like I've been sleeping on a really fucking good band. Unless this is like a big change in their sound overall. Because this sounds like Opeth, Catatonia, got Insomnium. I'd even throw in like In Mourning and Fires in the Distance. This is lush, melancholic, beautiful, very dynamic death doom. Lots of huge sweeping melodies, both clean and harsh. Great vocal duality too, like you get the whole Beauty and the Beast aspect. Like honestly, you kind of get like Michael Ockerfeldt and Jonas Rensk kind of in one person here. The dude has both of those qualities in his voice. And the same goes for the music. It's really solid. Like there's a lot of stuff that I would say kind of borders on progressive metal, at least in terms of its transitions and builds and such, but it has more of that like later Catatonia vibe. And with that band, I'm still really not sure what to consider their modern work. Like it still has like the appeal of doom metal, but it does have a lot of progressive textures too. You get a lot of really good haunting, dissonant melodies, Overcast in particular, Echo Attempt. I really like that one, especially how it kind of matches up to this like really like interesting stuttered kick groove. And that song in particular also shows off their ability to write giant choruses. Like as melancholic and as dreary as this gets, they really know how to kind of lift you up a little bit with the choruses. Echo Attempt in particular, they bring on some giant strings. I think that comes in like the later choruses. Like the first chorus is a little bit more subdued, and then those last choruses get even bigger. The title track, Spirit Corrosion, I mean, almost every one of these tracks has a giant chorus on it that just has these beautiful melancholic hooks. the production here is fucking incredible. Like, everything sounds very spacious. It has this kind of like dense, misty fog hanging over it, but it still sounds very clear. There are synths on here, but they are a little bit more in the back, and they're mostly just used to accentuate the atmosphere. Like, there's very few times that they kind of come to the forefront and like really like become like a big active part of the melody. A lot of it is just accents and such. You even get like kind of a dirge / ballad on the song Allure too. This album is fantastic. Honestly, this is kind of everything I wanted from Catatonia that kind of didn't get in that last album. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to get the harsh vocals of Catatonia, but this just kind of like scratches a very particular itch. Like, you know, the Catatonia Opeth thing, also like Paradise Lost, a little bit of My Dying Bride, October Tide, stuff like that. This is really good. And hey, honestly, it's in contention for my year-end list. There's a couple on here that may or may not make it. I don't know. There's been a lot of good albums that have been coming out here lately. And this is yet another one. If you're a fan of like any of the bands that I mentioned, strongly recommend this album. This is great, miserable, rainy day fucking music, which that is exactly what it is doing outside right now. So yeah, perfect time to bring it up too. Prophecy, Foretold, Foreseen. This is the debut album from this Texas-based death metal / brutal death metal act. Another one that I kind of picked up on random. A buddy of mine, the record store, recommended this to me. I got this in the same batch as like Dying Fetus, and like, yeah, why not? Let's grab one more fucking brutal death metal album. And this turned out to be kind of a really interesting listen, and also interesting in terms of digging up information on this band. Now, this came out in 1998, and I believe this band had a history of breakups and reformations. In terms of turnover in this band, it's pretty insane. This band, since its inception in 1998, and again, I don't know if they've been active all the way through till right now, they've had 12 bassists. They've had 6 vocalists. That does not count backup vocalists that were either bassists or other guitarists on here, because they've had 7 guitarists in here and a whopping 10 drummers as well. The only OG member in here is one James Park II. I think it was James Park II or just James Park. Either way, he is the principal guitarist, I believe, and the owner of Prophecy Records. Imagine that. Now, this version's on Corpse Crystal Records. I don't have the original, and honestly, I kind of want to get more of this because this was really good. Very riff and groove oriented, lots of chugging, lots of like double time grooves, Core of Depression, Human Atrocity. This wasn't just like a total blast beat fest the entire time. There's actually a lot of cool nuance in the songs, especially since they're a little bit longer. A good chunk of these tracks are over the 6-minute mark, and there's a lot of like cool riff changes and shit, a lot of lead breaks, and this is also loaded with some killer guest spots here. John Gallagher, Jason Netherton, also Eric Lindmark from Deeds of Flesh. And ironically enough, you know, this band kind of sounds like Dying Fetus, Deeds of Flesh, and of course like a little bit of Suffocation. But yeah, this is just solid, brutal death metal. And again, not really one year. In fact, there's a fair amount of melody on here. I will say that a couple of longer tracks did kind of drag a little bit. Like, this is admittedly long for the style of what they're doing. Like, you know, with brutal death metal, I'm used to like shorter tracks, like 3.5 minute range, maybe 4. Yeah, that's kind of like tops for me there. Unless you can find some like really cool ways to kind of stretch it out, then, you know, even like the coolest riffs, the coolest chugs, they get a little bit boring after a bit. I kind of felt that way about Inner Reality. Again, like nothing on here was like really bad. It was just like, all right, maybe not repeat that riff this many times. But overall, this is pretty good. And interestingly enough, this band popped up on a 2-day like death metal show out in Fort Wayne next year around St. Patty's Day, and honestly, I might have to check it out. I mean, Incan and the Bog are headlining it, so that's already enough for me to get out there, but they got some pretty solid bands as well as this one, so yeah, maybe a chance to pick out more by them. Anyway, if you're a big fan, again, of Dying Fetus, Deeds of Flesh, maybe like a little bit of Gorgasm too in the faster spots, check this out. Pretty nasty stuff. Thrice, Horizons West. This is the 12th album from this California-based, God, what would you even call them now? Like post-hardcore, art rock? I don't know. Thrice has evolved so much over the years, it's really kind of hard to pigeonhole them into one group, but I know that I love this band and I buy their albums all the time because, again, whatever they are, they just write really awesome music. And this is I guess like the long-awaited companion piece for Horizons East, which, God, that came out like 5 years ago, I think. But this, once again, just kind of like showcases how varied this band's sound is. You have a good mix of like anthemic, but very like earnest rockers. The opening track, Blackout, it's got like good anthemic kind of like, you know, punk breakdown vibes where everyone's shouting back the fucking lyrics. You get some heavier cuts like The Dark Glow, which, God, man, that song is absolutely dreary and loaded with these big, huge, fussy rock hooks. And part of that song really reminds me of Goodbye Blue Skies by Pink Floyd, and that's like a top 5 fucking song by them for me. Vesperlight's a good, heavy, anxious rocker too, but Nash is probably like one of the heaviest songs I think they've done in years. You have like almost kind of like later Nine Inch Nails mixed with like Baroness and Mastodon. The guitars are fuzzy. Dustin's actually kind of screaming again, which that dude like did some vocal damage like forever ago. So the screaming stuff he just doesn't do as much. But here he sounds like vicious and angry. You have this really cool breakdown at the end and these like weird, like almost electronic drums. But it isn't all like heavy and snarly. Like you get like some more throwback punk numbers like Crooked Shadows, Holding On, and definitely kind of a callback to their, you know, earlier years, but like the more melodic side of it. Loads of atmosphere throughout these tracks, like whether it's the, you know, the scathing feedback in the heavier songs or like these really lush vocal parts, pianos, there's xylophones, I believe, on the last track. This is very like hypnotic, very open sound to it. It sounds very organic. I love the production on this one. It just has this big, beefy, but again, like very like organic sound. This band, God, man, if I was gonna like compare them to someone, I guess you could compare them to Muse at this point, but they're heavier, they're darker. Like while they have like the arena size hooks, it's just a little bit more brooding, a little bit more intensely personal, I guess. I don't know, there's just something absolutely awesome about this band that keeps me coming back, and I love, again, their continued evolution in terms of their sound. Like, they are so vastly different than they started, and I like they keep kind of moving their sound forward. And honestly, man, this could show up on my year-end list. I don't know. I usually have like 1 or 2 non-metalish or like, you know, bands that are on the cusp as far as their status there. And this one might be one of them. I don't know. It's an absolutely incredible album. Again, if you're a longtime fan of this band, then, I mean, there's a good chance you already got this. But if you like stuff like Baroness, Nine Inch Nails, again, Muse, occasionally Foo Fighters. I don't know. It's really kind of hard to describe, but it's going to be linked down below. I just recommend you check it out. Modern Life is War, Life on the Moon. This is the 5th album from this Iowa-based hardcore act. I actually went over this band in States of Metal for Iowa. I'm a big fan of their album, Midnight in America. I think it's just this crazy, dark, atmospheric, like weird hardcore album. And I had not followed up with that band since that album. In fact, there's an album in between this one and that one that I'm missing, maybe 2. But there's also about 10 years between that last album and this one, and I saw this was coming out and was like, you know what? Let's see what they're up to now. And things have changed a little bit. I mean, it's still hardcore, though I would also say like there's a lot more like indie rock involved in here. Like the guitars don't necessarily have like a big hardcore presence. Like they're a little bit more on the punky side, kind of, you know, squawky and, you know, not like, you know, just heavy, like chunky sounding. Maybe like chimey is the word for it. A lot of this kind of reminds me more of like Refuse than anything else. But even then, I think Refuse has like a little bit more love for metal in their background. This has like a lot of like twisting, weird atmosphere. There's synths and like atmospheric parts. Honestly, there's parts in it that kind of remind me a bit of, you know, Mars Volta. I mean, we could even go as far back as At the Drive-In too. Like it still sounds, you know, vicious. It still sounds like it's, you know, music that's kind of like on the attack. But at the same time, it feels like there's a lot of like artistic expression on here as well. You even get like some more electronic moments in songs like Kid Hard Dub. And I don't know what that song title is all about. First Song on the Moon and Empty Shoes. Like there's some almost kind of like Nine Inch Nails-ish sort of moments on there. There's some good faster punky songs too, like You Look Like the Morning Sun, Bloodsport. Honestly, that's a pretty fucking killer song. 2 big standouts for me though, just in terms of just being just solid songs. Homecoming Queen and the last track, Talismanic. I think these are just like excellent, well-written, hooky songs. They're catchy. They don't really have like a particular style I think they go for. It's just, I don't know, kind of them. And that's kind of this album. Like, it's a little bit all over the place. There's a lot of like 90s, like weird tropes to it. Again, like Nine Inch Nails, a lot of like weird indie rock. It's heavy, but like in a different sense, like not a metal heavy, but it's also like very tuneful, very catchy at points, also very scathing and noisy. Different than what I'm used to from this band, but still pretty damn good, honestly. If you're a big fan of, I don't know, like Nine Inch Nails, Radiohead, Refused, there's almost kind of like a Melvins-ish quality in terms of like how different the songs can be. Yeah, I don't know, just think like weird 90s bands, and you're kind of close on this. But honestly, I just recommend listening to it. Check it out, form your own opinions. This is a wild listen, but I kind of dig it. November's Doom, Major Arcana. This is the 12th album from these Chicago-based melodic death doom veterans. I've been listening to this band since, mid-2000s, and it wasn't until they played at MDF in 2022 that I realized they're American. I thought for the longest time they were European, at least like English. Like I thought they were like, you know, My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost. Like they all hung out together and talked about how miserable everything was together over a pint. So that was kind of a weird revelation, just to hear American accents on stage and then just hear what I still consider like a very like European style of death doom. Like these guys would fit in perfectly with the whole Peaceville sound. Like if they were part of that whole fucking movement back then, easy fit. And honestly, I would say this is one of their strongest ones in a little while. Like I liked Nephilim Grove. I thought it was solid. This one, I feel like it's way more dynamic. The songs are bigger, huge downtrodden riffs, lumbering grooves. It has that sullen, very melancholic vibe. These agonized, woeful groans that are still very tuneful in terms of the vocals. Like the vocals, I mean, he's, you know, I believe the only original member. But the guy has always had this great transition between like these bottom heavy growls to these just absolutely woeful but tuneful groans. Now, I will admit, it took me a little bit to get used to the production on here with the first track, June, because I feel like the vocals were just right out in front, like almost too out in front. And I was kind of hoping this wouldn't be the mix of the entire album, but as the album went on, it seemed like they kind of moved back and like to like a more just natural position because they were just way out front. As the album went on, I feel like they kind of took some effects off his vocals, at least in spots, because he's got a good natural voice. Like, I want to hear what he sounds like live on an album. But that's generally me with like a lot of production. Like, I want something that sounds close to what I'm going to get live. That's kind of always been my thing. But as this album went on, I feel like, you know, the production kind of settled down, you know, that or my ears kind of got used to it. I feel like the vocals did move back a little bit in the mix, and honestly, this sounds fucking great. And throughout the album, you just get a great balance of different styles in here. Like, you get the more goth-centric stuff, like the dance is just pure goth rock. It still has the chuggy, more metallic riffs to it, but the whole vibe of it is definitely something more akin to like Sisters of Mercy. Lead Stag was also a big standout for me. I love the transitions where they kind of like well up the energy. Like there's a whole like clean transition into like this big chorus where you get that slow rumbling drums, you can feel the energy welling up, and you just get this like just melodically bleak tidal wave of musical tears that just rolls over you with the chorus. I fucking love that shit. You also get some good flat out just heavy aggressive tracks. Ravenous, The Fool, Chatter. These songs are darker, meaner. They still have their good melodic hooks, but it's more about the aggression overall. This is a solid album, and I really wish we had got around to reviewing it, but we just didn't have time. And, you know, this year, it seems like every week is just absolutely overloaded with releases. It's been impossible to keep up. But this is a banger. Solid. Through and through. If you're a big fan of, I mean, Peaceville Death Doom, especially, I think you're going to love this. So, like, Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride. I would even throw, like, Early Anathema in there, too. Check this album out if you haven't heard it. If not, I mean, this band's been around for a while. This might be a good starting point, and then just kind of walk your way back, because I would say like most of their stuff is pretty damn solid. So yeah, check it out. Excruciate, Passage of Life. This is the lone full length from this Swedish death metal act. Came out in 1992. This is a 2019 reissue on Thrash Records. Anyway, this band featured members of Grave, Therion, Carbonize, and Dark Funeral, and put out one absolutely kick-ass Swedish death metal album. Like this, I would say falls on the whole HM2 thing, and this is the only one, so I'm going to keep this one kind of short because I already teased Jam and John with this. Like, hey, we're getting down to retro review time here, and December, January, probably a good chunk of February too. We need some stuff to talk about, and this album, I think, is definitely worth talking about. And not only because it's 90s death metal, and this sounds like awesome 90s death metal, it's fucking riffier than hell. Not necessarily HM2, but maybe, I don't know, there's a bit of a debate there because I feel like there's also like a little bit of like the Finnish death metal sound in this too. All stuff that I would like to bring up more in long form, but I will just tell you, if you're a fan of any of the bands I mentioned, plus just like 90s death metal, like Wombbath. Wombbath, I think, is very comparable, especially their debut. Maybe Gorment too, maybe God Macabre. I don't know. It's in the vein of those bands that were kind of like outlier bands in the whole Swedish death metal scene. This band only had their one album, and then I think they broke up not too long after that. I'll do more research when, the time comes, but yeah. Just check this out. Trust me, it's awesome. And again, we'll probably talk about this one at length this winter, I'd say. Mortal Decay, Forensic. This is the second album from this New Jersey-based brutal death metal act. I recently went over their debut, Sickening Erotic Fantasy. I picked up the reissue on Dissonant Tapes, which this is a reissue on Dissonant Tapes. And it was, again, like one of those bands I've been meaning to check out more, but it's always been this album that got more of the hype, and I can kind of see why. Love the debut. I think the debut is like sick as hell. This one, I think, is a little bit better, honestly. And I can't remember who, but someone in the comments brought this one up when I brought up the last one. And they said, oh yeah, the vocals. The vocals are kind of like the big thing on this one. And they were ranting and raving about them, and I get it. The vocals on here are wild. Like, they're not just your standard brutal death metal vocals. There are parts that are, but this guy, whose name I did not write down, and I don't feel like opening it up and fucking looking it up. This guy has like a million different approaches, and he tries them all. Like, you have like the standard like brutal death metal roars and gurgles. You have some stuff that borders on like the devilish demon bullfrog shit. Mid-range growls, some high screams. The vocal performance on here is nuts, but it really does influence the dynamics of the songs, because these songs, I feel like, are better written than the ones on the debut. A little bit more concise. The riff work is just tighter. It's catchier. Drum work's fucking killer on here too. The song Monkey Cage in particular, amazing drum work. I love the dynamics on that song. It doesn't just feel like, a knuckle-dragging, brutal death metal song. Like, there's a lot of cool nuance. Like, this is, honestly, kind of on par with like a lot of like early Suffocation. And in some of the more like technical spots, because there's some really like clever shit going on here. Some of this kind of sounds like Afterbirth a bit. You can really hear that on Beyond Forensic Knowledge. That song, first off, it's like 8 minutes long, but again, like, it's not just your standard brutal death metal. Honestly, it sounds like a jam session between like Dying Fetus and Nile. There's a lot of that technical Nile play. There's a bit of atmosphere to it, but it still has like just the beat down chugathon sort of fucking vibe that you expect from Dying Fetus. Transitions are well done. It's very smooth. And then Recollections, the follow-up track to that, is like almost this like cool down from that 8-minute riff fest. It's more melodic. It's an instrumental. There's just a lot more to this one than their debut. And in terms of like brutal death metal, like, there's just more going on in terms of like technical play, atmosphere, songwriting dynamics. This doesn't sound like a band that wanted to like emulate all the bands around them. They sound like they really wanted to like strike out on their own and create some really different shit. And this is really different, but it's really fucking good. So yeah, this is like one of those albums where I feel like I should have owned a copy of this fucking forever ago. I just never got around to it. And well, better late than never. This is absolutely killer. I think they have 1 or 2 more albums. I don't know how they fare and compared to the first 2, but I still might check them out. But yeah, if you've never jammed this album and you're a big fan, again, of like Suffocation, Afterbirth, Deeds of Flesh, Severe Torture, Broken Hope, throw them all in there. Check this out. This album's absolutely fucking killer. The debut is awesome too, but this is definitely the better one. Ossuary, Abhorrent Worship. This is the debut album from this Wisconsin-based death metal act. Death Doom, maybe. I don't know. I know that they are playing at MDF in 2026. I've heard a lot of good things about this band. I've heard tracks off of their demos. And this is one that I wanted to go over again and review. And much like with probably a fair amount of these, we just didn't have time. And man, I really wish we had time because this is fucking gross. Like, this is a layup for like Jam and John in terms of a listen. Like, you just play in like 10 seconds of it. It's like, well, that sounds swampy, gross, and evil. Sign me up, let's do this. But that's a great descriptor. Like, it's just fucking filthy, slow, lumbering, these horrific, ghoulish screams and growls. Reminds me a lot of like, you know, Incantation, like Witch Vomit kind of like swirled together, albeit like a little bit slower. Most of this is very mid-tempo, a lot of like these big droning riffs and swampy tremolos, but occasionally it does pick up a bit. But it's those slower moments that I like because you can really hear these just fucking mammoth-sized riffs just kind of like echo throughout the giant cavern they recorded this in. And if you're just looking for like giant riffs over like a fucking filthy tone, I mean, songs, let's see, like Volitional Entropy, Inborn Scourge Unbound, Instinctual Prostration. You might just prostrate yourself right before these riffs because the weight of them will just force you into a kneeling position. Inborn Scourge Unbound in particular, there's like a layer of background noise to that song that just makes it sound even more menacing. Like it's like grinding, staticky, whatever feedback in the background. It just makes the texture of that song in particular like audio sandpaper, but like in a good way, I guess. Probably my biggest standout in here though is the undrownable Howl of Evil. That one in particular just has some of the grossest, most doom-laden harmonies and one of the gnarliest grooves. It's just this muddy stomp of a groove in this song that just sounds absolutely putrid. Like, it's so fucking heavy. But yeah, this album is just pure murk, lurching, menacing, bending riff after lurching, menacing, bending riff. It just sounds dark as hell, and I dig it, and I can't wait to see all this live. Maybe year-end stuff, I don't know. Again, a lot to consider, but this is definitely one that gets high marks for me. Really wish we had the chance to review it, but I mean, if you're a big fan of Mortiferum, again, Incantation, God, there's even stuff on here that kind of reminds me of like Conan in terms of like just that pure droning heaviness at times, but you know, definitely more death metal centric. Early Hooded Menace too. Check this out. This thing's just a monster. Pentacle, Under the Black Cross. This is the second album from this Dutch death metal act. I've been meaning to check out this band's stuff for a while. I just hadn't got around to it until I was rooting around in Dark Descent's distro. I'm like, oh, hey, there's that band. Sometimes it's like legit that easy. But I figured I'd start out with one. This one came pretty much highly recommended from fans. And this band is interesting in terms of their timeline. First off, they started in 1989, that's when they formed, but they didn't have their first release until 1998, which is kind of well after the whole boom of, death metal. And especially their style of death metal, because these guys play a very, very thrashy brand of death metal. Like this is very similar to Possessed, I would say like Pestilence, and even some of like the more aggressive thrash bands like around that time, like the ones that kind of border on it, like Morbid Saints, Devastation. I would even say like some of like the German thrash bands were, like a little bit heavier too. But it still had like, a fair amount of that early death sound too. Morgoth wouldn't be a bad comparison either. But this album is absolutely fucking ferocious and like fiercely old school. Like this does not sound like it came out in 2005 when, it says it did. I don't know if I fucking believe it. This sounds like it came out in 1989. Tight riff work that kind of bounces back and forth between thrash metal and that early death metal sound. You get those like very like raspy, ghoulish, very dry vocals, kind of Van Drunen-esque. Production is definitely a little bit more modern. It still sounds, more organic, but it's not like raw, like earlier death metal. But it's just riff change after riff change. Fast DBs. There's not a lot of like blast beats or anything like remotely technical. Like everything on here sounds ferociously 90s. A lot of flashy guitar play, not necessarily like in like technical songwriting or you know, like leads and such, but in terms of like clever harmonies, you know, like different kinds of harmonies, like, you know, the opening track, Into the Fiery Jaws, honestly, it sounded like a touch more blackened when the harmonies came in. And of course, you get some very Chuck-ish harmonies on here because, I mean, Death was probably a huge influence of theirs. March of the Camel Down too, there's like some very Carcass-esque gallops in there, some really savage galloping riffs, even some like double time, kind of like bolt thrower grooves. Like this kind of just checks off a lot of stuff that I love about old school death metal in general. But this also checks off a lot of stuff that I love about like more aggressive thrash metal. In fact, you could almost say this sounds like a death metal version of Sodom. Like they took, you know, Tapping the Vein and moved like more into death metal past that, because that's kind of close. Like it's on the cusp. There's also a lot of Slayer-esque riffs on here. Awaiting the Blast of Death in particular has got some great Slayer hooks on there. This is just an absolutely badass album. I loved every track in here. This is just high octane riffy fun. Again, it kind of lurks in that, you know, death thrash sort of kind of category. But yeah, if you're a big fan of Death, Morgoth, Pestilence, Slayer, there's even parts in there that kind of remind me of Creator, a little bit of Asphyx. Just check this one out. This is absolutely badass. Elk Lord, Lectionarium Mystica. I have no idea what that means, but I know that this is the debut full length from this Canadian sludge metal / stoner doom act. This is one that I got in the Metalhead box a while ago, and if you're looking over here, you'll see probably decidedly different art, unless I actually found the art for this, which I prefer this art. But I had no idea what to make for this. But I know with stoner doom and sludge bands, when you're named after large animals, or if you have like Lord in your name, generally you're going to get some fuzzy, swampy, disgusting stuff, and that is exactly what I got. This album is just drenched in feedback and all that like big stoner doom atmosphere, like big electric wizard vibes. The opening track, which Pujardov, I don't know how to say that word. There's only a couple of words I know how to say on here, in fact. Either way, the opening track has, again, like this just layer of fuzz, and then what sounds like the score to like a 70s kung fu flick or like a 70s chase scene in an action movie. But then the song really kicks into high gear. You get these raspy, screamed, distorted vocals. Again, very Electric Wizard in terms of like the envelope they put on the vocals, but, you know, more like like Weed Eater in terms of like the delivery of the vocals. Like they're just being shrieked and screamed. The guitars and the bass are fuzzy, lumbering, slow drums. Despite this being like just heavy, sludgy, dense, dark as hell, there's an odd, like, 60s acid rock sort of vibe to some of the melodies, too. Like, a little bit of, like, I don't know, I mean, I guess you could say, like, Monster Magnet worship in there, but stuff that, you know, wouldn't sound out of place on, you know, an Iron Butterfly album. The whole thing feels more demo-ish, too, or like it's jammed live. Like, this sounds about as, like, organic as it gets. Like, you're just, like, sitting there in the room as they all try to just wreck your fucking eardrums. But they got riffs, and their riffs are fiercely Sabbathy. And, you know, when they get down to like some melodies, there's some good harmonies on here. Like, it's not all like super caustic. Like, there's definitely hooks in here, but a lot of it is about that just droning, lumbering atmosphere. The song Morgana in particular, they pretty much just let the bass take over that song in spots. Like, it's so fucking heavy and dense. I felt like that bass tone was just like kneading my brain like fucking pizza dough. You get occasional moments of like additional atmosphere, like there's some really cool phaser effects in the last track. Tuta? T-E-U-T-A. Tuta. We'll call it Tuta. And Naga Loka, I might have got that right. That song has an interesting turn into what almost sounds like lo-fi black metal. There's a blasty section with, you know, like droning tremolo riffs. They're very staticky, a lot of like gain and sizzle on them. It definitely sounds like black metal was the gear there, but they didn't change anything in terms of their overall setup. Like, they didn't adjust the production or anything like that for just this one moment. There's like, no, let's see how this sounds overall. And I mean, it kind of works. I thought this was a pretty decent album overall. It's heavier than hell. It's got some interesting surprises. Like, it doesn't necessarily stay on the whole sludge, stoner doom path. Like there's some parts that they go off the trail and, I don't know, pick some mushrooms and eat them and then freak out. I don't know. I dig it overall. It's grimy. It's weird. If you're a big fan of Electric Wizard, Mono Lord at points, definitely like, Bongzilla and Weed Eater, like there's definitely those vibes too. But also like some Sabbathy stuff too. I don't know. Just check it out. It's a fun, weird listen. And finally, we have Madrost, Primitive Reflections / Imagination Theory. Now, this is a compilation of, I believe, 2 different EPs from this California death thrash act. And I'm reasonably sure this band has been brought up in the comments before, like as a recommendation. And again, I get inundated with recommendations every single day, and it's almost impossible to keep up with it. But I try to remember them. And this one, I'm absolutely sure someone, or even multiple people, recommended me this band because I like death thrash. And lo and behold, it shows up in the Metalhead box. Kind of like how that works out. But this is an interesting compilation because I get stuff from 2 different EPs. There's also live tracks in here too. They're not muddy. I can hear what they're doing. And they sound really fucking tight live. And that matters to me in terms of like a live track too. Like if you give me the muddier stuff, I'm like, well, that's cool if I could hear it. These I can hear. And what I can really hear too is also awesome death thrash. Whoever recommended this band, they're right. These guys are good. Like this is like, very much in line with like Demolition Hammer, early Sepultura. I would even throw in Morbid Saint too. Tight riff work. The riff work I'd say stays more in the thrash lane, but the drums will break out of that. You get some cool blast beats, some of those like, galloping blasts. You get like that Igor Cavalera kind of beat. Sorry, that's the only way I know how to really describe that one because he's the first guy I ever heard do that. Either way, lots of machine gun riffs, raspy, aggressive vocals. Again, those stay more in the thrash lane too, but man, this is just got some punchy, fucking vicious songs. Aggressive, raspy, thrashy vocals. They occasionally will sound like Chuck though. Like, it depends on the song. Like there's, I think maybe the vocal approach on a couple of these songs, they wanted them to sound a little bit more like death metal centric. Solid balance of like machine gun guitar driven barn burners in here. Depravity, the opening track in here, is an absolute fucking monster. Same thing with Into the Aquatic Sector and Dying Thoughts. Dying Thoughts, big standout to me. There's some like heavy syncopated like breakdown sections in there that's very similar to like Decapitated. The groovier songs are heavy hitting as hell. Operation Xenomorphic Protocol. There's a lot of sci-fi themes in here. I, again, just now like getting into this band and I don't know what all their themes generally are, but I'm getting like a big sci-fi sort of vibe, especially with dude's head opening into a wisping eyeball. I want to say there's also some demo tracks in here, but honestly, like, all of this sounded good. Like, again, even the live tracks, live tracks, you do get some, like, roughness, and occasionally some of them are a little, bit too gritty. But overall, I dug everything on here, and I think I need to check out more by this band. Like, this is the stuff that, goes all the way back to my teenage years in terms of, like, the overall sound. Like, this came out in 2025. This band does not sound like anything that came out in 2025, though. This sounds like 1990, 1989. It has that particular like thrash, death thrash sound from that era. I will probably always love that. And again, if you're a fan of, Sepultura, circa like, Beneath the Remains Arise, or Demolition Hammer, Protector, also pretty damn close too. Just check this out. It's fucking awesome. And that will do it for another collection update. I am already working on the next one, and that next one's going to be, I think, mostly 2025 releases. I'm going to be going over a whole bunch of shit I missed. But in between catching up on the collection updates and States of Metal, got some other stuff we're working on. We're going to try to make sure, January, since it's going to be a slower month for releases, we're going to see if we can load you up with some bigger content. We're going to try to get the Immortal ranking out by then, and then after that we'll have Obituary, which is going to be a lot of fun. So yeah, lots of stuff coming in the future here. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They're only 99 cents, and our lone perk is doing a members-only live stream, which I don't know when this comes out, so I don't know if we've just done one. I don't know if we're on the precipice of doing one. I don't know if we're on that point where we're announcing the next one. It kind of just depends on when this comes out. Either way, though, memberships are the main way to support the channel, and there's a join button down there for you to, drop an elbow on, headbutt it, fucking kick the thing. you know, it's a join button. Do whatever the hell you want with it. You can even press it like a normal, boring-ass person, too. It's totally up to you. Either way, though, thank you guys so much for, like, every bit of support you guys have given us. It's been amazing doing this. It continues being amazing. We are getting close to wrapping up our 6th year doing this, onto year 7. Fucking crazy. Either way, a large part of us continuing on is due to you guys. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for, again, every bit of support you guys have given us. So one more big thank you because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.